everybody. Welcome to the Energy Newsbeat podcast. My name's Stu Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group. I'll tell you what, if you are like I am, I'm over here during the inauguration screaming and yelling and watching Barron Trump talk to President Biden. You can't buy this kind of entertainment in the United States today. Today, we are going to talk about California. We're going to talk about energy policies, and we are going to talk about solutions. I've got Mike Umbro, and he is with the Premier Resource Management as the CFO over there, and a longtime friend of the show. I have had several podcasts with Mike, and absolutely think he is a top-notch guy. Oh, are you still here, Mike?
Oh, I'm still here. Can you not
I
see
did
me?
not. I did not want to.
Did I
I don't want to say
vanish?
nice things in front of you. And
Yeah,
it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm being too
yeah.
nice to you. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm stoked. There's good vibes in the country right now. I'm happy to see we've declared a national energy emergency, specifically calling out policies in the western states that need to be unleashed. And so I'm every day's a good day right now. So I'm excited to be here and appreciate you covering this topic. It's a very important topic
Oh,
for our
this is a
country.
huge topic. Now, you say you ran into Chris Wright in DC.
I did. Yeah, he was in the
Oh, no
lobby
way.
of the hotel, and I was having a drink with a couple of buddies. I said, "Hey, that's Chris Wright," and then they said who before that they could say anything. I just jumped up and ran over and introduced myself to him and his wife. I said, "Hey, Secretary Wright, can I just take 2 minutes of your time?" And he was super gracious and stopped. And I told him about our project with Premier Resource Management and our
Hey,
$6 million grant award through the DOE Solar Energy Technologies Office to demonstrate geologic thermal energy storage in depleted oil reservoirs in Kern County. And so it was a great, it's one of those things where when you're in DC, you just make the most of every conversation, no matter how brief or impromptu it is. And I'm excited to have an energy expert in that role.
isn't
We
that
really
great?
need, yeah, yeah.
I've had three or four interviews with Chris Wright, and I think that he is one of the premier reasons that President Trump is going to be able to keep his commitment of reducing the energy cost to consumers. He
Mm-hmm.
says by a half. Now, here we are on day three as we're
Right.
recording this. And President Trump is signing all of these executive orders. I think Doug Burgum and Lee Zeldin are the three horsemen that are very critical to get
Mm-hmm.
that done for President Trump.
Okay. Yeah, I think so too. I think they're phenomenal business leaders, they're phenomenal minds, they are pragmatic, and most importantly, they want to support good energy policy in the United States.
Right.
I think that's bar none. It's not let's export our environmental problems over to China and the lithium supply chain and all this nonsense that's happening. It's let's focus on how we make America resilient, affordable, reliable, and dominant in
Right.
every aspect. And that's what America's all about.
What did you think of President Trump's declaration for energy?
I think it's long overdue. I think he recognizes that the West Coast, specifically California, where 40% of our imports as a country flow through our ports. And once they get here, they're moving on our diesel in the state of California, which is the highest in the country, or our gasoline, which is the
Right.
highest price in the country, or our utility rates, which are the highest in the contiguous United States to refrigerate the produce, or our
Wow. Yeah.
agriculture in California, which is 14% of the United States agriculture. All of these elements, Trump, he is a business mind and he understands the supply chain and he understands that if he does not fix California, national inflation does not get fixed. And it starts with energy policy.
I hadn't thought of that. I've been writing several articles on things, and when you sit back and take a look at how Governor Newsom has been importing oil and absolutely crushing domestic California oil, and
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable the delays in permits,
Mm-hmm.
everything that he's doing is detrimental to Californians.
Right.
75% of the oil that was brought in, 25, 30% of it was from sanctioned countries that are horrible.
Right. Well, our largest source of import from the OPEC nations is Iraq. So Iraq is bringing us 70 million barrels a year. Iraq is the most methane intense barrel in the world, save for Russia, which is sanctioned. And Iraq is partnered with Iran on all these energy deals. So the people of California are sponsoring global terrorism, whether they know it or not. Governor Newsom's
Wow.
policies are sponsoring extreme environmental leakage, human rights abuses. The parliament in Iraq, just last month, it was reported, wanted 9-year-old girls to be able to be married. And so there's all of these just atrocities happening in Iraq. And it's all done in the name of the environment in Sacramento. And it's a total retardation of energy policy. It's backwards. It's not saving the environment. In fact, the port complex of Los Angeles and Long Beach is the largest source of pollution in the Southern California region. It pollutes more than all 6 million vehicles combined. And that's per the South Coast Air Quality Management District. So when you just look at the supply chain and look at the holistic picture of this, it's a disaster.
Wow.
And Trump realizes that, and so do the new officials in charge at the Department of Energy, and it's got to stop. It's long overdue to reverse these policies.
Wow. The supply chain, A, being broken. And when you take a look at his Operation Stargate with
Mm-hmm.
building the AI data center, I've been
Mm-hmm.
also writing several articles, Mike, on the growth and demand versus what's in construction and in the pipeline.
Right.
And Texas ERCOT has about $4 billion in natural gas plants rolling and going forward. ERCOT, the three grids, ERCOT is one of the nation's grids and it's Texas
Mm-hmm.
only, they're saying they're going to be doubling their demand in 5 years. Well, I'm thinking, wait a
Right.
minute. I went to Oklahoma State and we can barely count. We have pavement just now drying on the runways there. So, but when you start counting I go, wait a minute, they do have enough natural gas pipelines, I mean, power plants in construction and to make a good stand against that dent on increase in demand. Not
Sure.
all states have that. You look
No.
at what is coming in the construction. I was looking at this right before we got started. California cannot keep up with demand. You
Right.
you look at the new build power plants coming into, they're all solar. There's no
Mm-hmm.
natural gas.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing else. You have no new nuclear. You have the coal plant that is in Nevada is sitting outside of Nevada, and you're buying your electricity off of coal from
Absolutely.
Nevada.
Yep.
You're paying a higher rate, but you don't have a plan in California to how to grow that. New York is the same way.
Yeah, it's all smoke and mirrors, and it's power purchase agreements that are not, again, holistic of what's truly happening. You've
Right.
got a CAISO, California Independent System Operator. Our grid is still 43 to 46% dependent on fossil fuels, largely natural gas. You've
Right.
got a flood of photovoltaic power coming on every day that is destabilizing the grid. We're shedding load to neighboring states. We're subsidizing the border towns in Arizona and Nevada with effectively free photovoltaic power. And then we need the fossil fuels at night. And so what you're doing is you're paying these base load power plants to effectively be running only part of the day. And that makes that aspect more expensive. Our grid infrastructure, the power lines, the transmission needs to be expanded. We need to utilize what we have. And that's where we see as an operator, the future is geologic thermal energy storage. What we're talking about doing with our demonstration and development is building a 400 megawatt synthetic geothermal power plant out of an oil reservoir. So a true renaissance of the oil and gas industry where it's not this mindset of we're going to throw away a reservoir, we're going to plug and abandon everything because we don't want the oil. No, it's renaissance in the form of carbon sequestration, which California Resources Corporation has 4 injection permits for class 6
Nice.
carbon sequestration wells. It's what we're doing in geothermal. It's repurposing and redesigning and reimagining the oil fields that have been defined over 130 years through extraordinary development and production, building, quite literally building the state of California into the world's fifth largest economy. And you simply can't electrify everything in an economy our size. It's not going to work
No,
without new technologies and expediting those technologies. And that's what I read when I read the declaration on a national energy
no,
emergency. We need to be doing it faster. We need to be doing it with local energy support, not lithium supply chains with slavery, forced labor, manufacturing. Oh, by the way, the world's largest lithium battery plant has been burning between Santa Cruz and Monterey, California for a couple of days now, 300 megawatts up in smoke. And potentially the other facility, who knows, there's probably some barrier, maybe they'll stop it, but half of the facility is gone.
right.
And there's been 3 lithium battery fires in San Diego, where I live, in the past 18 months. Meanwhile, the media and Sacramento pretend like lithium is the solution. It's not. It's not right for the grid. It's great for
No,
people's luxury vehicles around town. If you can afford $100,000 vehicle, they're
right.
cool, but it's not for the grid.
No, it really isn't, especially as dangerous as they are. And insurance has just gone through the stinking roof on cars, let alone houses. I don't know how people afford to even live in California anymore.
It's very difficult. The really the only people that can afford to live here are very high income earners or folks that have been here for a long time, like myself, generations that have been born and raised here, which there's not a whole lot of us, but we're here. And those of us that are from here, we're not leaving. So the solution is to fix it or basically suffer. And so we're going to fix it.
Who do we talk to get it fixed? Besides, let me get President Trump on the phone since he
Yeah.
is a. I mean, this is so cool
Yeah.
though because we've got to fix drill locally. I wonder how President Trump can call up Governor Newsom and say, "Get off your high horse." And drill locally as opposed to import all your oil. I don't know how that happens.
Well, there's a couple ways. So we started Californians for Energy and Science, a nonprofit focused on studying energy, economics, and the environment in California. And we were just in Washington, D.C. last month. We'll be there every quarter for the next 4 years at least and into the future. But it's
Nice.
bringing scientific research to the political decision makers and the agencies and showing this with data because that's what moves the needle. We can all complain as much as we want, but until we go and present the facts to the politicians in a thoughtful way, in a clear, concise way, it's too much. It's information overload for most politicians. So we've really been focused on creating those documents, air monitoring studies, economic impact studies, sharing those with our state senators here, our assembly people, and also at the
Nice.
federal level.
Have you been able to get that information to Chris Wright?
Yes, I've sent him some information. I sent him we after our DC trip, we wrote a Unleash Western States Energy Policy memo with 6
Nice.
suggestions and recommendations. We've been circulating that with California congressmen and women. I sent it to him. I know he's very busy, so hopefully he's had
Let's
time
see,
to
get it
read it. But
confirmed.
a lot of the stuff for Chris Wright, he knows already. So it's kind of for me, my purpose with Chris Wright is just for him to know that when he needs someone boots on the ground in California, he can count
Right.
on us. But a lot of these things are really common sense. It's
But
support the local economy instead of importing Iraqi barrels, bring that 7 to $10 billion a year of economic impact back to Kern County, where we have 1.8 billion barrels of proved oil reserves in 2018 before Newsom took office. That at the time was more than the entire state of Colorado in one
exactly.
county in Central California. So it's all about unleashing what we have here in the state.
See, this is where President Trump, you and me and Chris Wright need to sit down and talk about this and say, look, you just nailed it. You said, hey, I'm here, I'm boots on the ground.
Right.
I know all the EMP operators around here and everything else. And Chris Wright is going to be really busy. But President Trump has got to be able to get legislation in there and say, no more importing of Iraqi oil, make it local.
It's
That
a
ought to be something we get out of this podcast and get
Yep.
on President Trump to sign.
It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer because if we're saying we're doing something in the name of the environment, we haven't even talked about the Amazon region. We have in the past, but California now imports more oil from the Amazon region, the most biodiverse ecosystem in the world, the quote unquote lungs of our planet. We import more oil from the Amazon region than we produce in Kern County. That is a disaster. And
And
for any people that say, "Oh, we can't do it. We don't have enough oil." That's baloney.
yeah,
In the 1980s, California and Alaska supplied 95% of the oil that California needed, and it was at a much higher consumption rate. We're still over 540 million barrels a year consumed, but we can absolutely, between California and Alaska, supply 80 to 90% of the oil we
right.
need. It's a no-brainer to reverse these policies.
And there's absolutely no reason. And I love President Trump when he's sitting there saying, when we offload everything to China, China doesn't have walls and all the pollution comes back over in 4 days and it's in California anyway. You know,
Absolutely.
and we know how in California and our great operators there. I know several of them out there, and they all of the ones that I know are great people that are very people think EMP and exploration operators and oil field service folks are not environmentalists. The ones now are. I mean,
Oh,
it's not.
absolutely.
This is not the old days. This is not like it used to be.
Absolutely. It's a bunch of people that love to be on the ocean, surfing, fishing, love to be out in the outdoors,
Yeah.
hiking and enjoying the natural environment. And for that matter, the industry itself is the poster child for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We don't need any baloney quotas with DEI. On diversity, the workforce in Kern County is 60 to 70% diverse. On equity, we pay 80 to $123,000 a year, double or triple what the average wage is in California. On inclusion, we're hiring second chancers from prison. We're keeping them out of prison, and we're hiring people without even high school diplomas. So it's on all of the metrics that the quote unquote progressives like to create
Right.
these cumbersome programs around and hire illegitimate, unqualified people. The oil and gas industry has been doing it for decades, and we do it better than any other industry. We just stink at talking about it. We don't know how to share the good news, and it's our job now to share that good news.
And you know what's fun is the reach of the podcast like this gets out there. And so
Yeah,
we've got to notch it up another game. And so this
absolutely.
is pretty cool. You mentioned something though when you say that our workforce is diverse. You mentioned work. For those
Yes,
that want to work, oil life in out in the field is tough.
it is. It's hard work, it's
But
long hours, but it's good pay.
good pay, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love the old working out there or the being a pipeliner. You know, when you're a pipeliner, it's a whole different animal. Those are long days too.
Yeah, we do it at our company. We're a small three-person company. You know, we hire the rig crews to do services and we hire crews to do things, but we're out there ourselves because again, we love to be outside in the environment. We're stewards of our lease and our land, and we're working long days ourselves. It's that entrepreneurial spirit that needs to be just supported and cast in a great spotlight to the people of the United States.
You know, and I am looking forward to sanity being restored to Washington regulations, and Lee Zeldin and the EPA have got to get this under control. But Mike, your posting on YouTube when you're
Mm.
standing out there looking for that lizard was absolutely hilarious. I
Yeah.
love that. Oh, look at this. I cannot permit, and there's a lizard, and there's like
Yeah.
5,000 lizards out here, and there's
Yeah.
not but yet the windmills are killing birds and bats, and now we have mosquito overpopulation. They're
Right.
killing the whales. We now have a national security issue because of the offshore wind. I mean, and you
Right.
take a look at radar trying to come in. We have no clue what's past those windmills because they are a real bad disruption.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's actually legislation in California that exempts and allows take of fully protected species for photovoltaic projects. So that's the kind of policy that is just bad policy where now, okay, I can take a fully protected species only if it's a photovoltaic project. But meanwhile, we're over here in oil and gas. We're hiring teams of biologists. We're surveying in
Right.
the springtime for adult lizards. We're surveying in the fall for the juveniles, the hatchlings. We're not finding them where we're developing our projects. If they are around, we're excluding that land from development. We're protecting the environment, and we still can't get a permit. So it's that whole notion of picking winners and losers and
Right.
tilting the playing field in an unfair advantage for really inferior energy projects. That's the problem. And that's why we're seeing the most
Right.
expensive utility prices, the most expensive gasoline. The pricing reflects the inferior policies.
This would be a wonderful interview if we could get out there and have headphones on a lizard
Yeah.
like Elon had to have on a
Yeah.
poor seal. Can
Yeah.
you believe that California regulations required him to put headphones on a seal? Excuse me,
Yeah.
does that rocket bother you?
No, I don't hear it. Yeah. I don't hear it. Yeah, I think it's if only people knew the precautions we took in oil and gas and
Right.
the efforts we take to protect our environment in very remote areas of West Kern County for us that are not the most biodiverse ecosystems on the planet. Yet we still protect every plant, every animal that needs to be protected. We use pad
Right.
drilling. We reuse surface infrastructure that's already disturbed, and we're transitioning. Our pilot demonstration for geotests will be 100% on disturbed oil field land. We're not taking new land, and it's still cumbersome to permit. So those kind of narratives need to be
Wow.
exposed.
This is really huge because when you take a look at the fires that are going on in LA, and the number one problem that folks are facing is permitting. The
Mm-hmm.
permitting holocaust of California cripples business. It cripples.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is horrific. I wonder how you get that solved.
And to put it in perspective, the oil and gas industry in Kern County provides $200 million a year in tax revenue that pays for teachers, firefighters, police officers, first responders, services to the homeless. And those are the sources of funding that are drying up and causing those budget cuts in Los Angeles. The oil and
Oops.
gas industry as a whole in the state is a $200 billion a year industry. And somehow we're thinking that the number two consumer of fossil fuels, California, is just going to shut it down and not use any by 2040. It's
Nope.
not possible. It's the timelines are too tight. It's prohibitively expensive. And you're seeing the results where critical services are being sacrificed again in the name of the environment. Well, one bad fire season in California emits about 100 million metric tons of greenhouse gases. That's equivalent to our entire transportation
Oh,
sector. So almost, a massive portion of West LA just burned down. The smoke and particulate was just raining down in San Diego because we didn't have a Santa Ynez reservoir above the Pacific Palisades full. It was empty. And then we didn't have the firefighters fully funded. How are they going to fight a fire if they don't have money and water and equipment?
and
It's not
and
possible.
then you take a look at the arsons that have been geofenced with Tony Seguro off of
Yeah.
X, and he says, he's got 80 people that were arsonists around in that area.
Yeah.
It's not climate change; it's
No,
arson.
it's not at all. It's not climate change. We've had Santa Ana winds here since whatever, going back geologic
Yeah,
time, since
right,
forever, there's been Santa Ana winds here. And we know, as a native San Diegan, we know what happens in very rainy years, which we had two very rainy years back to back. The
right.
vegetation grows. If you don't clear it, the next year we live in a desert. The drought comes and it all dries out and it's just ripe for fires. And so,
Ooh,
couple that without policing and without enforcing the rule of law in California for the past however many years, you allow arsonists, you allow homeless to set fires in their camps. Just before this event, about a year ago, the 10 freeway was burned down, the overpass, because there was stockpiles of wood pallets and homeless living there, and they set it on fire, and they had to fix the 10 freeway. I mean, this is not something that should catch anybody off guard. These are all
no.
known trends. It's all very cyclical and predictive. You definitely know this stuff is coming.
Wow. I if I lived out there, I would definitely. And one of the worst Newsom regulatory issues was trying to ban gasoline engines,
Mhm.
and one of those is like a pump. A guy saved his house because he had a gasoline pump and ran sprinklers off of that pump and saved his house. But that same gasoline engine is outlawed.
Yeah. Well, I think this ideology of all electric is going to go by the wayside as people realize it's really an all of the above. We
Yes.
as humans have never transitioned off of an energy source. We can look at Europe burning wood pellets. We're still burning biomass. We've not transitioned off of that. So I think it's really harmful for politicians to distort facts and reality and science to say that something is happening that is not happening. We're still
Right.
dependent on fossil fuels, and we will be for the foreseeable future.
You said you were working for a charity or a
Yeah,
not for
I
profit?
run our nonprofit. It's called Californians for Energy and Science. So we kind
Nice.
of we go out to universities. We've spoke at UC Berkeley, Harvard, University of North Dakota, University of Southern California, really educating at the student level. Taft Oil Tech Academy at the Taft Union High School in West
Nice.
Kern County. Students want this message. And even when we go to UC Berkeley, people say, "Why are you wasting your time at Berkeley?" The students, after we speak, say thank you for delivering this message because it's not something we hear. We know there's more to this story. We know there is a global supply chain. We know
Right.
there's environmental leakage, but we're not getting that information in our coursework. So that's what we're out to do is educate students, and it's going to take 30 to 40 years to re-educate society. We see how environmental activists have totally perverted the education system into
Right.
false narratives, into climate catastrophes, into all kinds of nonsense. And so what we're about is just presenting facts and data in a non-emotional way, and students love it, and we have to start with the students because they're the future.
That is phenomenal because I think when Jimmy Carter put in the education board, the education department nationally and federally, the United States went downhill from there because they had an indoctrination department as opposed to an education department.
Yeah, yeah. That's
And
what it
so,
is. These kids have been indoctrinated, and the good news is they're waking up. There's more pragmatic thinkers. It's just the climate alarmists and the activists are louder, and that's the only
you
reason that we
do
hear
you
about it
think
so
the
often. They're
net
just louder.
zero, do you think the banks bailing on net zero is probably one of the biggest indicators out there? The global banks are bailing on net zero on funding on those kind of projects because they realize sustainable energy is not wind and solar. I
No, and it
mean,
has to be affordable. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal today talking about fossil fuel companies and comparing, I think it was Total Energies. Their renewable portfolio was generating an 8.9% return, their fossil fuel portfolio, a 20% return.
right.
So, natural gas is going to be used, you touched on it earlier, for data centers and AI, and the big companies are going to become power providers. That's what's happening. And so
Right.
we're a part of that as a small company trying to do geothermal power. And so it
Isn't
is the
that
future.
great?
The future is power. And
Right.
the most successful companies in this space will be the legacy oil and gas companies that have the knowledge base, that have the skilled
Yeah.
workforce, that have the balance sheets to support long project horizons. All of those characteristics point to a strong, healthy fossil fuel community creating new energy projects for the people's needs.
That's pretty cool. As you say that, I'm sitting there going through my articles that happened last year. Total Energy, as we say in Oklahoma.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, Total Energy.
of
They
course.
they bought enough natural gas power plants in Texas to equal the four nuclear reactors that are running.
Right.
So you are right. They are diversifying into the power sections, and they are diversified into the natural gas space. So if I was a AI, and you look at President Trump with his Stargate initiative, and you look at where can you build power plants, I think we're going to see microgrids starting to becoming a huge issue for those that can afford the natural gas pipelines. So if you're an AI data center, would you want to build in California? No.
I'd want to build on the border of California and Arizona and Nevada and be in Arizona and Nevada where they're shedding free photovoltaic power all day long and I'm going to get free power. And that's what you're going to see happen. And then in California, you're going to see distributed energy generation like our geotest project because we need to maximize the existing infrastructure of the grid. We need to turn
Nice.
reservoirs into clean power projects. And then at that point, I do see data centers that want to run on cheap, reliable, affordable geothermal power. But we need to crawl, then walk, then run. And so the first
Right.
step to all of this is permits. And again,
Right.
that's what President Trump is talking about by declaring a national energy emergency. We
Isn't
need to
that
get these
great?
projects permitted. He's invoking multiple agencies, the Secretary of the Army, the Defense Production Act. I mean, when you this is a I would encourage everybody to read these 10 pages because this is the blueprint he's using. And what you won't find in here is the word wind. You will not find the word wind one time in this
Oh no.
document. So
He does
the
not like
pickleball
wind.
of energy, as I call it, is on pause.
The pickleball of energy. Can I quote you on that one?
Absolutely. Yeah,
I
I should probably trademark that because it is. I mean,
it
the
is.
idea that California is going to put 25 gigawatts of floating wind turbines in deep offshore waters and then transmit those electrons into the Bay of Humboldt and then get that to the consumer at any reasonable price and with any semblance
Right.
of reliability. It's fairy tales and unicorns. It's not
It
possible
it
and we should
is.
stop funding that garbage.
And any goodness that would have happened by that would be totally destroyed by Gavin Newsom taking a swim in the bay because an oil slick would develop from his hair.
Yeah.
And so he would have a oil slick worse than the Exxon Valdez.
Yeah, we'd get the boats with the dispersants out there real quick.
I am kidding, of course. No, I'm not. That man is absolutely self-interested and not doing Californians any favors.
Well,
So
I
with
think these fires have really, sadly, I've always said that to fix California energy policy, it's going to take a disaster. I always thought it would be a supply crisis or a price crisis. And
wow.
the whole nation's about to see more disaster unfold. The California Air Resources Board has just adopted more stringent low carbon fuel standards, so those will take effect this quarter. In the next 60
No
days,
kidding.
our gasoline, which is averaging somewhere around $4.30 or $4.40 a gallon today, will jump to over $5 a gallon for no reason other than the fact that an unelected crew of bureaucrats at CARB have decided in their infinite wisdom to make it more expensive to get around and move products in the state of California.
It does nothing to reduce the pollution.
No, nothing. It actually makes it worse because CARB in their scoping plan says we're going to need 4 to 5 times more tanker ships delivering refined products, finished products to the port complex. So we're going to be flooding our marine ecosystems and our port cities with SOx, NOx, particulate matter just spewing out of these tankers in 2040. We're going to increase them right now. When you look at that port complex, you'll have somewhere between 20 and 30 tanker boats just floating around our shores at all times. We basically have floating storage rather than storing it in a reservoir safely under the ground. We're just going to float around the marine ecosystem, killing whales, poisoning our air quality, and that's going to increase by 4 to 5 times. And that's a CARB scoping study statistic. That's not me making something up.
Wow.
So it absolutely is creating massive environmental leakage and devastating our air quality and marine ecosystems and
Well,
making energy and the movement of goods prohibitively expensive in the world's fifth largest economy.
well, Mike, I'm trying to help put together, panels and get more information to President Trump through Chris Wright and all of those
Mhm.
guys because I believe and President Trump, God bless him, with the the advent of the death of mainstream media, people do not want even any, they want information that is true. They want
Right.
fact based information. And I think if we can help that, I'm going to lean on you a little bit and see if we can have you as our boots on the ground trying to help California. Because as Texas, New York, and California go, so goes the rest of the country. And
Absolutely.
I love the way you phrase that, that President Trump cannot get inflation for the United States under control if he leaves California out. I hadn't even
No.
thought of that. I was kind of
And I
like,
think he knows that. He knows that we saw Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska write an op ed in the Wall Street Journal last week citing 40 billion barrels of proved reserves and 135 trillion cubic feet of gas. Maybe it was 235 trillion cubic feet of gas. California is no different. We've got the same vast resources, and those two Western states traditionally have won world wars. In World War II, Kern County in California was the largest global producer of oil. We ramped up production 42% to supply oil to the Allied forces. Trump knows these things. He knows his history. He knows how critical California and Alaska are to the entire country. And that's where I push back a lot online when people say, "Oh, you voted for this in California, and oh, California is just, let's just forget about it." It's like, well, no, actually, California has the most congressmen and women in DC. We
right.
have, for the Biden administration anyway, we've dictated the environmental policy in Washington, D.C. So you can't just ignore California. We
No,
are the biggest economy in the 50 United States,
yep,
and you can't ignore it. It's just a fact of life. So
no.
come on in here and join the fight, because this is the front line of the battleground for our future.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a Texan because that's where I'm most of the time hanging out there. But when you sit back and take a look, I'm like, screw California.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, that's like a normal Texan would say. Except no, your comments are now making me really go. We got to get it fixed because
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
you take
maybe in 20 years Texas economy will be as big as Californians. But you're not there yet, and you're not
we
even
ain't there
close.
yet. No, we're not. But the funny thing is, take a look at Governor Hochul. She is just as bad as Governor Newsom from the standpoint of signing in climate reparations against big oil companies. Does nothing but want to drive the oil companies out of New York. Can you
Right.
imagine if all the oil companies left New York? What travesty that would be.
Well, and it's happening in California. I don't study New York as closely because it's not traditionally a large producing state, but one of the biggest disasters that happened in California was in 2015. Lawrence Berkeley National Lab wrote a report on well stimulation, hydraulic fracturing.
Right.
Hydraulic fracturing in California uses less water than the other shale plays, does not extend oil field boundaries. It lowers the carbon intensity of oil and gas
Right.
produced in California. If you read this report, you would think, well, I want more of that. And that's why hydraulic fracturing was banned by executive order, because they didn't like the science. The science said it was good for the people of California. It was good for the economy and the environment.
No
And the
way.
science, that is exactly why it was banned. And it's why you see, because people will say, well, the Monterey Shale in California didn't work out. Well, it was never given a chance to work out. That's why. We absolutely start, if you look at the data, we started increasing production in 2013 and 14 when we just started to crack that code. And then the report came out, they paused everything, they stopped issuing permits, the executive order came out by Governor Newsom. And what have we seen in states like Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, North Dakota, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia? Reserves and production hockey sticked to heights that nobody thought was possible. We all thought it
Right.
was, or well, we didn't all think, but peak oil, the Hubbard
Oh
theory.
yeah.
Yeah, and what is it? It's science and technology that unleashed those reserves. The beauty of
Yeah.
California is they're still there. They haven't gone anywhere. We just need the national emergency
Emergency.
declaration on
I
energy
love
to
this.
start impacting, so that we can unleash California's reserves and save this country from nationwide inflation.
You know what? After this conversation with you, Mike, you have absolutely made my day. And I'll tell you, this is, and I'm serious. I am pumped up. I mean, this
Good.
is what we've got to do,
Yep.
and we have got to do this. So again, people can get a hold of you on your LinkedIn, Mike Umbro,
Yep.
a good-looking guy. I mean, you're sitting there with an oil field, Premier Resource Managements, and Duke
Yep.
University at Nicholas School of the Environment. So
Yep.
just like Chris Wright, you're an environmentalist that it happens to work in the oil business.
Absolutely. I'm a 100% absolute environmentalist, beachgoer, outdoorsy,
Isn't that
lover.
cool?
Everything. Everything about my life is getting vitamin D and being outside. And the last thing I want to do is hurt the environment. So, yeah, I went back to school and got a master's of energy environmental management from
Nice.
Nicholas School. And it was a great experience. And I'm using a lot of that teaching and learning and applying it to turning an oil field into a synthetic geothermal project. So it's
Wow.
exciting. It's fun times.
I cannot wait to see more papers on that. So
Yeah,
look forward to
I'll
following it up
send you a
while you
link
do
with
that.
all the media coverage we have so far, and look out for the demonstration coming launching here soon.
When is it?
We're waiting for our final award documents from the Department of Energy. I know with the transition, there's a lot going on over
Oh,
there, so
sure.
we'll get that
This is
launched
pretty
as soon
exciting.
as they give us the green light. We're going.
I'll tell you what would be fun is if you could do live podcasts from the demonstration.
Oh yeah, I got my microphone here, my laptop, my setup. I just invested in that equipment with that exact idea in mind. So
I want to
we got
help
to
get
take
this
people to these
story.
sites. I'm about letting people in and letting the
Yep.
good news flow, letting the light shine. It's 2025. It's we're not looking back at the past. We're going
No.
forward.
I like the way you think. Mike, have an absolutely wonderful day, and I cannot wait to see you again. So
You
thanks.
too. I
We'll talk to you
appreciate it.
soon.
Yeah, I'm stoked for it. Thank you.
All